Meeting for July of the School District of Oconee County Board of Trustees. A lot of months we have two, but this particular month we just have one meeting. So we just welcome you to it. At this time, we observe a moment of silence, and if you would like to join with us, I invite you to do so. Amen. And now, if you will stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Y'all have seen tonight's agenda for the July 18th work session and regular meeting. Did anybody have anything to add or any changes you wanted to make? All right, then we'll approve that with no objection. And at this time, it is time for public comment, and we have someone here who'd like to speak with us tonight.
Butch Clay.
Well, without further ado, thank you very much for giving me a minute tonight, and thank you, Sandy, for giving me the good info so I can get set up. I hope you all will pardon my hat. I'd rather you see the hat than the state of my hair right now. So, thanks again. I came down here tonight because I would like to personally express my appreciation to the public school system, specifically Walhalla High, but especially to the band program at Walhalla High, and most especially to that band program as it has been so good for my son, Benjamin Clay, who just graduated and is now moving on to Western Carolina University. He's gotten himself accepted and has gotten himself admitted into the School of Music there on the basis of his flute audition. I'm very proud of it. But I wanted to specifically sound a note of appreciation to Christopher Udell, who was the band director at Walhalla High. And I know he's moved on, at least I believe he has, and I regret that. I understand he's pursuing a higher degree. My son Benjamin has struggled throughout his school career with a learning disability, ADHD, which he got, honestly, from his dad. And he had a really hard year in the pandemic year, especially because he had childhood asthma, so we elected for him to go to school online entirely. And that exacerbated some already existing problems in attentional matters. What I want to do is at least put on the radar with you good folks my wish to see that the band program, all the music band programs at Walhalla High, specifically under the directorship of Mr. Udell, get recognized by whatever official means may be appropriate or available. And I didn't really, as was probably obvious by now, I didn't prepare any special presentation. I just want to put it on the radar, and I'll follow up with you folks with a letter suggesting this notion of mine. I was especially attuned to what I think is the excellence of this program by watching throughout the year, watching Mr. Udell teach these kids and lead them. The band program, the marching band, the Pride of Walhalla Razorback Marching Band, rose higher in terms of awards at the regional level and higher in the state competitions than ever before. I can't enumerate exactly all of that right now. I'll follow up with that. So I will be following up with a letter of personal appreciation to Ms. Jennifer Crawford, new principal at Walhalla High, and to specifically enumerate my appreciation for all that the band program did for my son. But I also, because I was attending a lot of the competitions and went to all the football games, I feel like I have a good sense. Well, that was quick.
As can do.
Okay, 51 seconds. I feel like I have a good notion of the excellence, the devotion that Mr. Udell brought to this program. I have long said that I am a big supporter of public education, and I am, and I think that it is incumbent upon me as a parent. I've put one through this school system. I've got two more to go. I'm old enough to be the granddad, but I'm the dad. And one entering Walhalla High this fall, another still in Jameson Brown. I taught for 12 years in two different therapeutic programs, helped start Whetstone Academy. I'm retired now. And so I think I have a good idea of just what a great program this was for my son, for any kid. And I'll stop there. I will follow up. I appreciate the time. This was sort of incoherent, but I do appreciate the time to speak, and I hope you folks, I'll follow up with a letter, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Clay, thank you, and we certainly hope that Benjamin has a wonderful first year at Western Carolina.
Thank you very much. I think
We
he's
do, and we
off
thank
to a
you for
good start.
coming. You know, there are some children that just respond in different ways, and certainly art and music are very important in our district.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all? Okay. All right, at this time, we received 3 sets of minutes. The minutes from the board retreat on June 6, 2022, combined board meeting minutes from June 6, 2022, and also the special called board meeting minutes from June 15th, 2022. I hope y'all had time to review those, and did anybody see any additions, deletions that need to be made? All right, then with no objections, we will approve those 3 sets of board minutes. And now it's time for Dr. Thorsland to give us his report.
Well, I'll start, just want to acknowledge we've got some newly elected officers for our Oconee Education Association. That's kind of been revitalized a little bit this summer, and I've met with them a couple of times, and they've expressed a desire to just be more visible, be more involved in board meetings, so they want to just start coming and getting acclimated to what goes on at our meetings and being more involved, so we certainly welcome them. Appreciate y'all coming tonight.
Welcome.
And I just wanted to make you aware of just a couple of back-to-school type items. It seems like it's earlier and earlier every year. I think we are 1 week earlier than what we were in the past, but we've got our administrators coming in this week, Thursday, all the principals and assistant principals meeting at the Career Center. So we'll have our back-to-school administrators meeting. That's just kind of, we call it our nuts and bolts meeting, where we just kick off the year with all that not always fun and enthralling information, but those things you have to do at the beginning of the year. So we've got that coming up later this week. And Ms. Simmons asked me to mention too that next week, kind of along with that, we'll have new teachers coming in. HR and instruction will be collaborating together to help our new employees get acclimated to the district. And then the second item here on my report, district-wide assemblies for the first teacher workday. This is something that we did routinely back when Dr. Truesdale was here, so 15, 16 years ago. And we've not done it since because there is an expense associated with it. But we're going to have a first day assembly this year, and we're going to do it inside so we don't fight the weather, potential problems there. So we're going to have 2 sessions. We'll have an elementary session and then a middle high session a little bit later. We've got a speaker who's going to come in, a guy named Chris Singleton. very powerful speaker. I've not heard him. I believe Steve has. He's a former minor league baseball player, but his mother was killed in the tragic shooting in 2015 down in Charleston. And one thing I remember from that time, that kind of, it gave South Carolina a very good name, that when things like that happen, there tends to be a lot of anger, rightly so. But in Charleston, it was forgiveness. That was the message, and Chris Singleton was part of that. And so he's going to come speak 2 different times to those 2 groups of folks, and we're going to try to have, a meal of some sorts for each group. So we'll have a brunch for the morning group, and then we'll have a lunch for the afternoon group, just kind of a grab and go type thing. But we want to just set the tone as positive and ready to get back to what we hope will be a normal school year after 3 interrupted school years with the pandemic. So anyway, just wanted you to be aware of that, and I certainly would answer any questions you might have about that. But I did want you to know, you may see some expenditures coming up on the future finance reports, but we do want to feed our teachers that first day and just make them know that we're happy to have them back and we're excited. And he even, Ms. Simmons resent this to me, but Mr. Singleton does, he kind of gathers some information from us, the purpose of us having him, that kind of thing. So we were able to provide some information to him so he could kind of tailor his speeches to our faculty and staff members. So we're excited about that. And the only other thing I had, I'm going to have to ask y'all to get up if you don't mind, but the School Boards Association likes to have school boards across the state welcome people back. So we'd love to get the 4 of y'all up here and 2 of you hold these signs, and we're going to email them to principals and ask them to print them and put them in the teacher workrooms or mailbox area, and then maybe one in the office for students to see. Mr. Hamby will snap a picture for Twitter, I'm sure. Look at that.
Let me get you down this road, it's like kind of
No,
lined
not
together
really
with my
center.
sign back with our mission statement.
We better?
Yeah, that's pretty easy. I won't do portraits. All right.
Great, thank you.
And we will certainly share a copy of that photo with you guys. Appreciate y'all doing that.
All right. We are pleased to have Joe Schicklin here with us today and our June financial report. If we could take a look at that.
Sure, get a new seat here, it's exciting.
No.
So on the financial report, on the revenue side, so one caveat, this is not going to be the final balances for the audit. We actually received this week payment from the county for the June tax collections. So we're, that's a moving target for local tax revenue. Obviously, it's not established when the budget is set, but we're ahead of schedule, we're ahead of our target here for budget in the finance report. So we also have good news coming in a fee in lieu of tax payment for High Point, and we are getting some revenue from Duke Energy. That was an assessment that hadn't been collected in the past, I guess, because my understanding at least is because of a discrepancy in the property value that was being sorted out, and now this is back payment due. So those are going to create a positive variance for us of a few $1 million. So that's good news, especially in light of our fund balance policy. Our budget is going up by 5% next year, so we'll want to maintain fund balance there. As far as the state revenues are concerned, we still have a payment to record there, so we should be right around budget on the revenue side. For expenditures, again, you see a lot of expenditure volume here because our final payroll in June has multiple paychecks for a lot of our staff members, and also on the check activity report, you can see some large disbursements there, although a lot of those were capital related out of the capital fund. So very close to expense on the budget, on the expense side, and a very good-looking positive revenue variance on that side of the budget. In terms of the check report, you can see large expenditures going out for the ECF funds. That's a federally supported program. That's our connectivity funds. That's a lot of the devices that were going out to students and staff members there. Waldrop, again, is HVAC upgrades, and that is another federally supported stimulus investment in HVAC. And then you can see Dell, some of the staff devices, and Trail for the SMS construction pay app. So on this report, I also tried to add some detail to break it down by which fund those payments were coming out of, because there was so much volume. So you can see there the majority of that expenditure is federal programs supported by stimulus or capital. And then lastly, the expenditure for capital report is included. Any questions that I can answer for you?
That is very thorough. Any questions at all? All right, we will stick with you and hear about the FY23 school lunch prices, please.
Okay, so this was a process that involved some conversation with the state ed department, understanding the USDA rules, because for 2 years we haven't had lunch prices and we haven't been charging. So we wanted to understand exactly what our obligations were in terms of establishing prices once again, now that the rules will be returning to some semblance of normalcy. So what the USDA puts out is a calculator that is based on a goal, which is for the 48 contiguous states, a goal of $3.31 for a meal price, and that's based on their estimates of the reimbursement that they're giving back versus what the production costs are. So any district that is charging below that has to complete this calculation. And so what you see in front of you are some of the considerations for establishing that price. The federal waivers have ended, so we needed to determine what was the baseline we were going to use, because we don't have meal participation or prices for 2 years in a row. We had the option of, and this is some of the guidance from the technical folks at State Ed, we had the option of trying to complete that calculator for the past 2 years and rolling forward the pricing each year, or we could start with the pricing that we last ended with in 1920, as well as the participation data from 1920. And so the first option that you see listed there on the exhibit would have been us rolling forward the price increases each year and starting with that as our baseline. And the second option is what we would have started with as last year, or the 1920 output, and starting there. And there is a pretty substantial difference in the two prices if we were to do that. So our consideration then was balancing the impact to families in terms of an increased meal price versus what we know are increased prices for labor and commodities, and making sure that our prices support the cost of production and running the program. And so in complying with the state's guidance, we've taken action to move the pricing to $2.60 for K-5 lunch and $2.80 for a sixth grade through 12th grade lunch. So the average between those meets that $2.70 threshold, which is compliant with the option 2 of the calculator by really 1 cent. So that is the least we can go with an increase where we feel like we're still going to comfortably be able to operate. So we are providing that. I believe this is an information item, not an action item, but so that rationale and justification was understood by everybody.
And anybody who's been to the grocery store or a restaurant, if you compare what you pay today to what you paid
Breakfast.
3 years ago, this is a very reasonable increase, I think.
And breakfast is not listed here. Breakfast has been $1.40 for, I think, since 2016, and we're going to $1.50 for breakfast Now, the reduced prices will be 30 cents for a breakfast and 40 cents for a lunch, so those haven't changed.
When did those applications come in for the free and reduced?
Those applications will be sent out in the fall.
Okay,
They are part of the online registration
Okay.
form. They're one of the,
Actually, do it online.
okay.
so it's just, when you roll, you do all your updated information, but it's one of our forms on there.
Okay.
We actually have tried to make it where you can't go beyond that till you at least put something in there, because we need people to fill that out consistently. Because I think over 2 years, people have gotten comfortable with not having to worry about it, and so, we can only serve you for 30 days, and then you got 30 days to get it taken care of, so, sorry.
No, I think this is very reasonable. Anybody have any questions or comments? All right, well, thank you for explaining that, and let's look good. All right, Mr. Handy, how is hiring?
Yes, I'm just gonna kind of give you where we stand with some certified openings, and there will actually be one thing that we had in the executive session, but for our biggest area, of course, is special ed teachers, certified teachers. We currently are looking at 6.5 positions. I have that broken down, 1.5 at the elementary school, 3 at the middle school, and 2 at the high schools is how we're looking, and we continue to, talk to, we've got a couple of retirees who we're talking to who may be willing to come back and help us at least through first semester to see. We might be able to do some internships second semester where when they're student teaching, they can control the class. We just have to assign somebody who is already certified to hold the IEPs, and we do that through a stipend program. So we've done that for the last several years. So especially at the 6.5. Elementary, we're looking for 4 certified teachers right now. Classroom, one's an interventionist potential, but the rest, a couple early childhood and 1 third grade. And those are at various schools. No school in the elementary has, multiple elementary openings. Ravenel does have a 1 teacher and 1 special ed, which is a PIP class for our preschool intervention. At the secondary level, I changed these numbers just now because we have a retiree who's going to fill in for first semester at least and see, and if we don't have someone else, they'll do the whole year if they need to. So we're down to 3 math at the secondary level, plus we need a part-time math at the adult ed to help us there. And we did, when I first did this this morning, we had an ELA opening, but you'll have that on the form where we've got a PACE candidate to fill that position this evening. I didn't list them all because it's kind of fluid. Obviously, we're going to generally have custodial openings on the classified side. We do have several classified positions that are special ed, instructional aides in the classroom, or extra adult assistants. Sometimes we assign it to the class, sometimes to the student. So we're looking for some of those folks. If there are people out there that are interested, they can go to the website. A couple of receptionists, and of course we'll always need bus drivers when we get ready for that time. It's just hard to judge that one right now, so we're having some classes in the summer and having people participate. So the biggest thing obviously is the special ed. I feel like we'll get the other folks. We may have to bring back some retirees, but that's great. That'll work out for us, and I think the elementary will be fine there. It's just continuing to search for those people with that special ed certification.
Always a problem.
It's not just a Oconee issue. It's, we've actually had some back and forth with some neighboring districts on who they're going to release and when they would release them. And we had one who we thought we were going to hire and couldn't get released. So just those kind of things. And, it's just that time of the year, and it's that battle. So just wanted to give y'all a little update on that because we've been talking about it a lot. So.
I'm just surprised at the elementary. It used to be, wow, there were You could choose anybody you wanted.
Well, these were a couple of late ones, a late retirement, and one who we did allow to go to a different district. You know, on those positions, I think our thought process is if somebody wants to be somewhere else, we really want to try to accommodate them in that. Can't always do that with the special ed part, but you know, we've had a lot of those who have been promoted within to different things. We have a new one who's going to help with compliance, and then we've had some who've gone to, MTSS coaching. We have some who've gone to assistant principal, so that's kind of hit us too in that area. But we'll keep working. HR, Mr. Leroy and Ms. Waring are continuing to reach out and try to find folks. They continue to recruit hard, so we'll keep getting after it and see what we can do.
And now, Dr. Thorslund, I think you're going to fill in for
I'm gonna
Mrs. Simmons.
Pinch hit for Miss Simmons, who has been dealing with a little bit of sickness. And I do want to go ahead and tell you, there's paper copies of this report at your desk. We can't make this public yet because it's embargoed from the State Department. We will certainly release these test scores to the public once the State Department gives us the green light to do that. But the main one I want to point you to is I asked Mr. Arnold if he would do some comparison from last year's scores to this year's scores, just to kind of see if being back in school full-time made a difference. And we used the same green and red. Green's good, red's not so good. And if you look there, it does compare the 2021 school year to the 21-22 school year. So the more green you see, the better. And with ELA, out of 42 different categories, if you take 13 schools and there are 4 categories for each school, there were only 9 that went in a negative direction, meaning 33 went in a positive direction. And some of them fairly significant. Like, for example, if you look at Fair Oak Elementary School, on that first page, you see a 7.1% increase in the number of students who exceeds. So the way this works, the first 2 columns does not meet approaches. Those are not the categories we want our students in. So if those went in a negative direction, they were colored green. Meets and exceeds, that's where we want our students. So if those went in a positive direction, it's green. And that kind of helps you interpret this data, but it does show that it was a much better year last year, and we had a lot of positive growth. If you look at the ELA chart on page 2, you see very little pink. And as a matter of fact, one of them that's pink is even a fraction of a percent, upper left-hand corner there. And then the same thing for math. The results for math weren't quite as strong as you see in the ELA. But still, overall, if you just look at the last line of each of the 2 tables, the ELA and the math, so that's the district totals, all green. So that means that when you look at the district as a whole, everything went in a positive direction last year. So that's a good thing. And again, we'll be happy to share more information, answer any questions you have, and we'll share this publicly once the State Department lifts the embargo. But overall, I think a fairly positive report. And there is the other chart that Ms. Bay put at your space is more detailed information. It breaks it down by grade level, but it only gives you the one school year on that table, just last school year. But it shows you there is quite a bit of discrepancy when you look. And Mr. Arnold and I had a quick conversation about this, but it's interesting. Even within the same school, one grade level will be really, really strong, and another grade level not so strong. And just we need to figure out why and try to get all of them performing at a higher level. But overall, I was pleased to see us moving in the right direction on the SE ready.
I was gonna ask, so when we have a school that has some work to be done in
Sure.
maybe one or two categories. What does that process look like? Do you guys go and meet with the principal, the assistant principal, that team, or do you pull in individual teachers? Like, what does that look like?
So, the district, Ms. Simmons and Mr. Arnold, they have a team, a data team. They go meet with the schools. Each principal has a team within their building. They go over this data along with other pieces of information, and they do come up with school strategies to improve. If it is teacher-specific, that would largely be the principal working with a teacher, possibly with the assistance of instruction or HR. We don't want any teacher to feel like they're nothing more than a test score.
Right.
So we want to provide help, encourage, allow them to maybe work with other teachers who are seeing more success. But it's a process, but we do.
It really is, yeah, systemic, because we start with the principals, and we may have them set up one of their adept goals based on the scores and say, our EOC scores need to go up X percentage, or our third grade ELA to fourth grade needs to move. They may target certain ones. They may target with the teachers then at the school level, their SLOs and their goals to match up with that as well. But the thing that I think Ms. Simmons would say if she's here, was here, is that we've got to look at multiple points of data. It's not just, the state testing. They have ongoing assessments, they have MAP, and we have now the MTSS process and IXL and all those different things that we're using. So they've got to be able to triangulate and put that data together and come up with the plan for that. But we do work specifically, and the principals usually come to us, and when they get it, they say, this is not acceptable, I want to work on this with my group, and then they develop a plan with, if it's a grade level or a subject area. So.
And we certainly use multiple points of data. This one does drive instruction because this is as SC Ready, this is the state test, which is based on state standards, and the state standards drive our timelines and our curriculum. So this is, I guess, if there's a most important test, this is what we look at, because this is what the state of South Carolina says students should learn. And that's what drives our instruction as a public school district.
Well, like you said, I certainly don't want teachers to feel like they're, nothing but a test score, because that's not true. And I don't want to see additional testing, I want to see that kind of dwindle down a little bit from the State Department, but just keeping us up to date as far as where we stand, and, this kind of gives you a snapshot as to where our children are and where our families are and where our economic impact is, so.
Sure. It's a lot of information, and
It is.
it's good information, and we'll study it and with the principals and their staff, see what changes need to be made, and try to keep moving in a positive direction.
Once the embargo is lifted, Michael, and you do have that opportunity to work with the principals and the teachers, if there's anything that we could do, or if you need any additional feedback from us, I'm thinking the trend. Mm-hmm. And I love the idea that overall the district has moved forward. I think that's a real plus, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought Mr. Arnold did a good job putting this report together,
Yeah.
because it does allow us to see that, and, we could even possibly add additional years kind of in this format, to see if it's multiple year trends moving in the right direction.
Good.
Well, and I do think there's there's such an impact by demographics in some of the schools, as well as, I don't know when we'll not see the effects of COVID on those groups of children.
It's gonna take a while.
It's gonna take a long time, and I think everything you read indicates that. And when we see, not the haves and have-nots, but as far as technology and things, those who were able to do more, I think the rural settings have a lot to do with it, and,
Oh, I do too. There's no doubt.
yeah, just very glad they're all able to be back in school,
And it's always.
and we're
a-
gaming.
Yeah, it's always can be a delicate issue as far as how to present data. I've seen it to where schools within a district are ranked, and you have the top school and the bottom school, and that's probably too competitive. I've also seen it where districts maybe only report the district average, and you don't even put the schools because you don't want the.
Right.
But I feel like it is what it is. I don't want to rank it, but I want to share it with everybody because it is, those are the actual scores, and we need to know what they are so that we can improve. So we've kind of adopted presenting individual pieces of information, but we're not trying to make it a competition amongst the schools. I want the schools to compete with themselves, because if they're all just getting a little bit better each year, then that's what we want.
Tell Mr. Arnold, thank you for.
Absolutely. It is a good report.
He may be watching. I know Ms. Simmons is watching, so I told her if she needed me to say something on her behalf, she could text me during the
Handy.
meeting, but she didn't text, so she just texted. Actually, she said, well, she said great job, so anyway, I guess I did okay, but we'll certainly pass that on to Mr. Arnold. I did think he did a good job on that as
You
well.
did an excellent job. That is a great report. All right. And now for discussion and possible action, let's look at the FY '23 board goals. I know that we met as a board to establish those goals along with the district office staff, so.
And I may have I got a couple of pieces of feedback. I know we talked one time, Dr. Ketterman, so if there's anything I didn't,
Yeah, I've got a few things just to talk about and point
Okay.
out if y'all wanted to
Yeah,
discuss some stuff, but was there anything anybody else wanted to say before or share? No. I guess a couple things, as I came on board last year and worked with you guys for the first time and getting some stuff, I think a couple of things that were really most important to me were, the enrollment in our career and tech education and making that a priority for our students to be successful in the workforce. And I really feel like we've done that and at our career center and with our new Kate director. I think they are just on a great path to getting our students industry certified and those work-based learning experiences. So I have been thrilled that that's still a goal. I think that just needs to continue to be a focus. And then because I have such a special training in the teacher retention and attrition, the exit interview process was important to me to see, why are our teachers leaving if they leave? If it's a moral issue, if it's a culture issue, or if, they get a new job and husband has to leave and go somewhere. There's all sorts of things that impact why a person leaves a career. But for me, I think especially this past year, as COVID has, drilled down and everything is just so much harder nowadays, I think, in the classroom and for families and our children, I would love to see some of that data a little bit more. And I know Mr. Leroy has been working hard on getting that, but making that a priority so that we understand. I mean, y'all brought us these sheets of resignations. Like, I feel like every month it's been, having to figure out why these teachers are leaving and backfilling and discussing, the stuff that Steve just talked about. So here we are, kind of in a crunch time, and we're still short. But what led us up up to that point is I think in my mind where we need to like truly focus. Is it a cultural thing at our schools? Is it an HR? You know, what are we doing or not doing leadership-wise that we can do better to retain our teachers, the people that are necessary in the classroom? And then the last thing, well, no, I've got two other things. Access to mental health. I definitely know that should be, you know, forefront in our minds. I know we implemented Gaggle last year, and that's been successful in some ways, and we've had a lot of feedback from that. But, you know, as we move forward with this as a goal, what do we want that to look like? What do we want that mental health goal to look like? And make it kind of trackable and you know, something that we can check off and make sure that we are doing this to the best of our abilities and not just have it as, you know, words on a paper, but we're actually getting something done. The other thing was for student well-being. You know, we're entering a new school year right off of a last school year with a tragic shooting in Texas. I do feel like we should always have school safety at the forefront of student school well-being. So I know we've got SROs in every school. You know, what else can we do? I know that we've talked with the county, we've talked with numerous people on what else needs to be done. I have shared with multiple people, I can't even get access into the building without a key card or being let in. You know, our buildings are secure, but are our grounds as secure as our buildings, and allowing people on those campuses that might be ill-intended and watching from afar. Those are the sorts of things that I think, yes, we can lock down our doors, but are our campuses as well secured as they can be? So I think safety should always be at the forefront of a goal, and just keeping that a priority. And then I think the last thing is just our construction updates as we have moved forward with a new couple of contractors and architects, keeping some of the public, or keeping the public updated with as much transparent information on our spending. And I know, Jay, you and Gloria have done a great job on making sure that those expenditures are on there. But does the public, can they just go to the website and see, you know, this is the latest update from Trail and the latest update from, you know, Jumper Carter? I think having them come in regularly, you know, quarterly or so, doing a presentation does good, just to allow us feedback and the public feedback. I think that would be important to add to. So other than that, I love the layout here and where we are and some of the things that are on here. Those are just a few of my thoughts.
And if I can just touch on a couple of those things. The exit interview, well, first of all, I agree with you, what you're saying about Career Center.
Yeah.
I think we're moving in the right direction. I don't think we want to lose focus on that yet. I can't say we're there where we want to be, but we're moving in the right direction. Exit interview, I think we're moving in the right direction too, because you brought this up last year and it got on the goals, and we did, Mr. Leroy did conduct numerous exit interviews this year. And the issue that we're having is so many of them have taken place in the last 3 months that we've not compiled them. So I think what we're looking to do to improve the process, we're going to make a report on his interviews this year. It'll be in a month or two. But it's more of a qualitative interview instead of a quantitative interview. So we probably need to move towards more of a multiple choice for some of it, with still open-ended response opportunities, but more of, you know, why are you leaving? Select one of the 5 options, so we can get instantaneous feedback and say 20% of our people are leaving because of this and 10% are leaving because of that. So we're tweaking what we've started, but point taken, we do need to look at that. I guess the one thing that while we are still struggling for a few positions, I don't think we're unique. It's what I'm hearing
Oh, yeah, no
from
doubt.
school districts around South Carolina. So I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong that we need to fix. But any edge we can get by staying on top of things will be beneficial. So we're moving in the right direction. Mental health.
And I wanted, just on the exit, he's getting this, but if there's anything that is a red flag, he comes and shares immediately with us. If something comes out in an interview where they didn't feel like the administration supported them, or those kind of things, we get immediate feedback on those. Now, we don't have it where we can say, okay, 3 people said this and some of the breakdowns, but he will have that, and I'll try to make sure that's done by the August meeting, and maybe even before if we can get it to you. But he's tried to catch up a lot of those as we go. Some people don't want to have those conversations. We understand that, and I think the fault for us was trying to have personal contact with everybody, and then you're just overwhelmed because you can't stop doing what you're doing, trying to hire people to set up 3 days of 30-minute interviews with 30 people who are leaving. But we do have that on the high on our agenda with HR, and we're working to make that right.
And mental health, that's another thing, another topic that's a statewide topic and probably even a nationwide topic. But the governor did put many more state resources into school mental health starting this fall. So we're going to be able to start billing Medicaid. Essentially, it just means that through Department of Health and Human Services, we're going to see more funding for mental health. And our strategy right now is that we want our 3 district-employed mental health counselors to start the reimbursement process to see what that will do. Department of Mental Health, where we've struggled for them to recruit counselors to be in our schools, they're going to get increased funding as well. So we hope that they're going to be able to possibly increase pay for the counselors they employ. So we want to give it at least a semester to see, because I'm just going to be honest, in an ideal world, I would still rather have counselors from Department of Mental Health in our schools serving our students than the school district have a division of mental health. That's kind of outside of our core competency. Our core competency is to teach, to instruct kids. And I would rather Department of Mental Health do it if that works. So we're kind of in a wait and see, but we're optimistic because there's so much additional funding this year for school mental health. So that's kind of where we are. School safety, we're talking about that today. I certainly think we want to remain vigilant. I think the 2 pieces of low-hanging fruit that every school district should have are school resource officers in every building and single point of entry. And there was an article today, even in E-Clippings, that says school districts are spending millions on, but is it helping? So I think those 2 are pretty important, and we're there. Now, does that mean that we don't occasionally leave a back door open somewhere? Possibly, and it sounds like that may have been what happened in one of the recent shootings. But we've got the framework in place, I think, for our schools to be as safe as they can be. But we need to constantly talk about it, consider if there are things we need to do to improve. Ms. Hughes was talking to us today about going to a clear bag policy for our events. So we'll probably be looking at doing that for the fall. So always something to be talking about. She has been meeting with the Sheriff's Department over the summer. So,
and we did get we're full with our SROs. We hired one for Seneca Middle, so we should now be fully staffed with our SROs. But she actually has another meeting next week with the sheriff and his leadership team. And one of the things that we talked about today was it's been because of our restriction on visitors, we haven't done the code reds to the depth that we did before, where we sent people in and did that to see how we react. Each school, they did them, but it wasn't the same as, having the sheriff's department come in. But they're developing a PowerPoint, that the Friday before school starts, that the SROs are gonna share with the, entire faculty and staff, reminders, and here we go, and even some things that kind of incorporate without doing the full stuff, some of the Alice training people have talked about, and just some things they can think about, and take a little time to do that. So they're working on that, as well as some other ideas for when we get back to school, to help improve the safety. We were talking about fencing today, those kind of things.
Dr. Flores, I wondered if the clear book bag policy consideration is for school, maybe in upcoming years, the schools versus just events, if that's something that we would consider.
It is something we could consider. I think the public has pretty much gotten used to clear bag policies in large events where there are large numbers of people. And I know one upstate district did specify clear book bags for students. Not that it can't be considered, we can certainly consider it. I don't think we should do it right now, because I don't think, we've probably got families who have already purchased things for the fall, and so if we did go that route, I think we'd probably still be a year away from that. We can certainly talk about it, maybe even see what Lauren's experience is implementing it this fall. But I do think most people, if you go to a ball game now, you kind of expect you got to have a clear bag. I think most ladies are getting used to not carrying pocketbooks in, because that's getting pretty common that you can only have a clear bag or a real small wallet type pocketbook. So we'll probably look at doing that, and if we do it, I think we're probably leaning towards doing it in the fall. I know Greenville's doing that, and, we compete against several Greenville schools, and so we may do that, but we'll certainly publicize that well before the first Friday night ball game. But always needs to be something that we're focused on. And then certainly the construction updates, we can look at quarterly updates from the contractor and/or A&E firm. One thing we might want to do, just because, like Jumper Carter Cease, they're based out of West Columbia, so we may need to figure out a way to do that virtually to keep them from having to drive back to Columbia after, a board meeting on a Monday night, but we could.
He's willing.
I know he's willing, but just, if we're gonna do it more frequently, that might be a consideration.
I thought I was thinking about we might could alternate, and then one quarter it'd be them, and then the cement risk company, and then just kind of going back and alternating.
Right.
And then just maybe having a page on the website where they can upload whatever information that they present, and we can put it on our website, and, where we are budget-wise, that sort of stuff. Accessible, just on the website would be, a lot of people do that. A lot of districts do.
We can certainly look at that. Just with those topics you brought up, I think the HCTC, we're good with what's there. The exit interview process, with that explanation, if we need to tweak it, we can, but just with what's there, that's our plan, to try to synthesize the information we gathered this year, but then starting in the fall, when we have people leave, next year, we would probably have more of a quantitative process so that we can get data quickly and report that, and go from there. Mental health, I know I was pretty vague about that, but I still don't have a plan, because I want to see what this new state funding does, just make resources more available.
Have you considered the mental health moment any further?
We did talk about that. I spoke with Ms. Simmons about that, and our elementary schools are doing that in there. They have through the Olveus and the morning meetings they have in their elementary. They're doing that. We need to talk to middle and high school principals if we want to have a mental health moment there. We don't, with the schedule's just different in middle and high schools. Now, they do announcements each day, but as far as having a time to sit down and really have discussions, we've got to figure out how to do that in that type of schedule. But elementary schools, I feel like, are doing that through their Olveus meetings and some of their morning meetings where they talk about those, different guidance type topics.
Maybe they could start with, maybe not necessarily a dialogue, but just a thought, something
Right,
for them to think
right.
on.
And we have done some of that. Of course, we've had the mental health emphasis in September that we do out at Blue Ridge, the Hike for Hope, where we try to bring some light to a subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about. So that's definitely something we need to keep working on as well. And that, the trauma-sensitive schools goal down there is related to that as well, because so many of our students that struggle with mental health is because of experiences they've had with trauma in their lives. But I'm happy to tweak any of those goals to get the language maybe with what we've discussed. The third column there, continue to work with Trail, Jumper Carter Cease to keep the new Seneca Middle on time and within budget. We could just say with quarterly board reports at the end of that. If you're comfortable with that, and then we can, since this is 22-23, that keeping it specific to Seneca Middle is appropriate because we don't have any other large projects going on right now.
Do we need to put something in there about the safety issue as far as the school environment inside and out, under student well-being? Do we need to include a goal in safety?
I think just top bullet, continue to make safety of all of our schools a highest priority.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can put that at the very top. There was another thing Mr. Hamby and I briefly talked about today was there's a district in Georgia that has gone to arming certain non-teaching staff, plainclothes employees. And that was something that we discussed as a district. I guess it was probably right after Townville. And I still think, while I think the resolution to that discussion was that we didn't have SROs in every school at that time. We do now as a result of that discussion. But I still think there's merit to that, that, a high school campus is a large campus. Is there room for some other faculty member who proves their competence? I don't know. I can see both sides of the coin. But those are the kind of discussions we need to continue having to stay vigilant and on top of safety.
And the sheriff's department, do they work with civilians to deputize?
They do.
people?
They have a program. You go through a training program.
I mean, we were pretty
Yeah.
well developed
We're-
at that point. I mean, there was a
Lot of
plan
discussion.
that could have been put in place that Sheriff Crenshaw felt good about at the time. I haven't spoken to him since that, so I certainly don't want to try to say he's where he stands on it right now. But at the time, he was willing to move forward if the board had decided to go in that direction.
Well, if you think about just pure number-wise, when you've got one SRO per school of 2,000 kids, or, whatever the number is, there's just not enough protection per school, if you think about it. I mean, in worst-case scenario, any tragedy that happens could there have been more protection that would have prevented more?
Well, and again, I don't want to open up a divisive issue, but just the shooting that happened this weekend. A law-abiding, gun-carrying citizen stopped what could have been a lot worse. Or at least that's the report I've read so far. So, anyway, it's definitely worth a discussion, and those are things that Ms. Hughes has brought up and we've talked about. We just, I guess, haven't gotten to the point of bringing it to you yet. But those are conversations that we're having. But I certainly think putting a student safety, school safety goal in there would be certainly appropriate. I guess that would go under student well-being. We can put it there.
Well, and safety too can go much more beyond the walls of our building. It could go internet,
Sure.
web, all of the dangers that just keeping, not necessarily tunnel.
Making that a
Yeah.
high priority, it
Yeah.
does need to be.
That's all I have.
So we will, if it's not a problem, I mean, we can still work with you on tweaking any words, but if you might could approve this with the recommended changes, and then we'll get something, I think by the end of the week, we can have you certainly a draft that makes the change on the construction updates, adds a school safety goal. Are you okay with the exit interview goal as it's written with the explanation of kind of where we're heading on that?
Yeah.
And then I think the rest of them, Dr. Sloan will still work on looking for opportunities to make sure mental health is being talked about. And, yeah, we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, we will put that down in our action items. Okay, go ahead and vote on it now since it's possible action. Let's go ahead and vote on it now. We'll entertain a motion that we accept the FY '23 board goals with the additions that have been discussed tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion or suggestions? All right, all in favor? Okay. Great. All right, next up is the FY '23 board meeting calendar. I would like to request that there be a change in the January meeting, or you can have it without me. I will be out of town on January 9th, and I realize if we move it a week, that would be to a Tuesday, because Monday the 16th is a holiday for the schools. So it would have to be on Tuesday, January 17th. Does anyone have a problem with that? Do y'all have a problem with that? All right, then I would like to suggest that change. Anybody else have anything on any of the dates that might be a conflict?
I think so.
All right, well, if it looks good to everybody, then let's go ahead and vote on this, please. I'd like to have a motion that we approve the FY '23 board meeting calendar with a change of the January meeting from January 9th to January 17th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right. Any more discussion? All in favor? All right, and then our school calendar update.
All we can do is apologize. I'm sorry.
One year, we're gonna get this thing on the first time, and it's not gonna be mentioned again till the next year, but it's not this time. Because the State Department told us that even though we thought we were following the rules, by not having a regular school day on election day, they told us that we couldn't have a teacher work day either. We looked back, we didn't know that we haven't had a specific teacher work day, but we have. I mean, like, these offices are open. I mean, schools, the people that work 235, 40 days will work. We can just give them time to go vote. But anyway, to accommodate that for our 190-day folks, what we have looked at, we being Dr. Thorson, is kind of like we did this year. So we would take that day that was a work day on Tuesday, the 8th of November, and we would make it a work day before school on the 5th of August. And I hope through the 25 people that are watching out there and the people that I've already communicated with through text, email, and other means, no, we will not have you come home from your vacation. There will not be any of that. It would be a virtual day. You could do it 2 weeks before that if you wanted to. It would be the HR basics and the things that we have to do to cover our stuff, just like we did this year, quite honestly. It would just give us a 6th workday before we got the kids there. And the main reason we don't want to change it to another day in the semester is we don't want to lose a day of instruction because we already have a shorter semester to finish exams before Christmas. So in just kind of brainstorming, it doesn't affect anybody else's calendar except the 190-day really employees. So, because that was a concern with payroll and us setting up the calendars and that. So we feel like this is the best option. Again, we thought that we got good feedback from that. It seemed to be productive. People had the stuff done when they came in on the 8th, and with us starting with a session with the speakers, that's just less stuff they have to worry about getting covered when they get back to school, more time for them to work in their rooms or work as their teams or plan or grade level and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we stand. It would, again, not be a in-service day. It would just be a regular day that the rest of us are open and we go vote when we need to. But
So the families that have already planned, vacation, they've already,
yeah.
How will that impact them?
It doesn't, because again, it's virtual.
Virtual.
The teacher, if you were teaching ag at Walla High and you were on vacation that week, as long as you do it before Monday when you come in, you can do it anytime.
Or they can catch up on the Saturday after, or whatever. I mean, it's up to their time.
There will
It's
be a
gonna on their
certain number
time.
of things that
Okay.
have to be done. There's certain bloodborne pathogens videos, sexual harassment videos that employees have to watch every year. There'll be a certain amount of training that may be done, watching a webinar on something, just different things that would add up to the equivalent of a workday. But it'll all be able to be done virtually on the teacher's time, at their convenience. Like Mr. Hammy said, it could be done 2 weeks ahead of time, assuming we get the schedule out that early. We'll try to get it out as quick as we can.
Yeah, a week ahead of time. But we had it out early last year.
And they can, as long as they get those things done by a certain deadline, then they get credit for having worked that.
And nobody has to come in to the building and do anything. They have access with their devices and that. I think the teachers we talked to last year, I don't know, it seemed to go okay for us as far as doing it, because at one time we talked about only doing it for one group, and then we decided we needed to do it for everybody, and we felt like it was successful in what we needed to accomplish. And it didn't, because it's our mistake, it didn't punish the employees.
And there's no need to look at, adding it on in May or further out into the calendar, and instead of it being on the front end, making it on the back end so that people can plan a little better.
I don't think it's much to plan for because we're allowing it to be done virtually on your own time. I think most teachers would say, if that keeps me from having to watch those videos the first day I go to school, great. I don't know.
if you add it
We'll
on,
put y'all on the spot, but y'all are welcome to chime in.
you add it on the back end, you end up coming back for the Tuesday after Memorial Day, and that just after graduation and everything, that was just our issue.
And we certainly could look at putting the deadline, instead of making the 8th the deadline, maybe we make the 15th.
As long as you have it before the kids come back.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, have it
You
when the
know,
kids
Give
come
them a
back.
little bit of extra, get home from vacation, you know.
Sure,
Let's give them a little leniency since it was something we overlooked.
sure.
I like that idea.
If you, again, you can make it available before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll work towards that.
We should be able to get that going pretty quickly. Once this gets changed officially, we want to wait. So that's the calendar request that we need action on, please.
All right, so is there a motion to alter the 22-23 school calendar due to Election Day to make August 5th a virtual workday for the teaching staff?
We'll move.
Any other discussion on that? All right, all in favor? All right, now we have a few things that we need to vote on. First of all, policy JICDA Code of Conduct. It is time for the second reading and final approval. We've seen this for
A long time.
a number of months.
Especially, and if, unless y'all will have a question, I'm not gonna go over the
We've
dress code part again.
We've
I
read
think
it,
we've
read it, read
done
it.
that. We pretty much all got that ingrained. And the one thing I do want to talk about is on page 11, where we have the tobacco and vape use and that. And we came to you, we talked about it, we had some questions afterwards from principals. So we did a Google Meet. We got everybody on there. All the secondary principals, elementary, they're good with it. Some wanted to go from in-school suspension to 2 days of out-of-school suspension. But what we landed on is what you have here, and the final recommendation we have with a little caveat I'll add at the end. First offense, vaping, possession of vape, that kind of thing, that does not have any kind of THC in it or whatever, it's just a straight up vape, is 1 day out of school suspension, and law enforcement will be called to issue the quote-unquote blue ticket. Second offense, 3 days out of school, and again, you get the blue ticket. Third offense, 5 days, and you have a discipline contract. And then if you get a fourth offense for that, then you have the recommendation for expulsion for continue not following the rules and breaking the law with tobacco. Now, there's a whole different section of the policy that deals with it if it has marijuana in it. So that's automatic, 5 days, and go for expulsion of those. And distribution is treated more severely as well. So what we agreed on was to do this, and what I told them I would do is talk to you all about it, tell you what we agreed on, and say that we want to really dig into this, and I may come back after the first 9 weeks and say, this isn't working enough, we're gonna have to let y'all vote to ratchet it up some more, so we want to they wanted me to put that out there, that if it doesn't work, they would like to come back, and even in mid-year, if we had to, because it take the readings, adjust to 2 days or whatever. Because when you get 2 days, 2 days you start losing. 2 days out of school starts costing you privileges, extracurriculars, athletics, band, different clubs, and that kind of thing. So it becomes a little bit more personal for the child then. So that's one reason why I wanted to leave it at 1 day the first time, and hope that would be the deterrent, because they knew the next time they were done. But if 1 day doesn't get their attention and help us decrease the issue, then I have told them that I would come back to you guys and give you the data and let us talk about it and see if we needed to up it mid-year.
good.
Because it is a problem. It is a major
It is a
problem. Takes up a lot of time for our administrators and folks, and it is a big problem. So, but we are up in the ante already. You know, one day out of school for some, can knock you out of school choice and some different things. So, I mean, there's consequences to it. So that's the main thing there, and we did spend a lot of time talking to middle and high school principals about that and got them to agree. We actually shared that with them to make sure that we were all on the same page with that. Do you want me to go ahead and do the other one, and then y'all vote on them both, or they're separate?
What happens if an elementary student brings the vape to school?
There's a little bit more discretion there.
Yeah.
It's typically they got it from their brother or sister, and they didn't know. Now, we did have a situation at one of our schools where they did know what they were doing, and so we handled it a little closer to, in line with middle school. But for most of the time, they don't use it or really know what it is. They just have it, and so we contact their parents and kind of maybe do some in-school and that kind of thing to show them. But we don't necessarily hit them as hard with the punishment as we do the others. It's written in all of them that there's a little bit more leeway for the elementary level because they're still learning.
Sounds
Hadn't been a
good.
big problem, knock on wood,
No.
but middle and high, it
No, I
most
just
definitely has
remember
been.
one of the young ladies that talked to us, did the
Said she got-
presentation, talked about, you know, she had been doing it since
Started
elementary
it,
school,
yeah.
so just, yeah.
Yeah, we did, we had
It
to
doesn't
bust
need
up a
to-
little ring place, yeah, so, I mean, we had to suspend some kids at the elementary level, this past year for it,
Hard to
because of
think
what they were
about,
doing,
but
so.
I'm sure it's there.
Yeah, it's tough.
Thank you.
Get younger and younger. The second one, if we want to do it, is the electronic devices, and really the only change in there is the middle school principals and folks were adamant about the change we made. I don't know which page it's on of the thing, Sandy, I can see she's got it up there, but middle school students may use their personal communication devices before and after school. Devices must not be visible during the school day. That's a change from right up above. We just kind of had grouped middle and high together. You can use them at lunch, and as long as they don't disrupt the day. It's causing too much drama and issues at lunch with Snapchatting and texting and having some issues. So the middle school principals asked that we break them away from the high school and give them their own. That is a little more stringent than what the high school has. High school didn't seem to feel like they needed to participate in that much.
That's good.
None of the consequences changed and that, so those stay the same. It's just gonna be a matter of educating them. You bring in your bag, you leave it in your bag. You know, maybe you need it after school for practice or whatever, but you know, time and place for it is not during the school day.
I think that's a good move.
I did have a parent who emailed me this morning and said she was thankful for that, that we were trying to do that. She had read that we were doing that, so.
All right,
I
so
move we adopt the amendments to the conduct code as presented.
and how about the second one? Let's go ahead and do both of them at one time.
Okay, and the devices.
All right, so we have a motion that we approve on second reading, final approval, policy JICDA Code of Conduct, and on second reading, final approval, policy JICJ, possession use of electronic communication devices in school. So is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any more discussion, any more questions? All right, all in favor? All right, and at this time, this is the end of our regular meeting. We will go into executive session. I would like a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel items.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?